Welcome to the English Out Loud podcast, a podcast where you can better your communication, listening, speaking skills in English on the go. My name's Pat, I'm from Toronto, and I'm currently living in Mexico. I've been here for some time now, and I really enjoy what I do. And what I do is I teach. I've taught English to people of all sorts. I've taught the American accent as well to many people from all over the world. And I've enjoyed it every single day. Now, I'm here to ensure that you receive quality content, that you learn, and that you have fun while you're doing it, because there are too many boring classes out there. And I'm not interested in that. That seems like a waste of time to me. Today we're going to be reading an article about a man who's become a billionaire selling water in China. And then I'm going to give you some tips from my own language learning experience just to help explain how you yourself can keep on learning and improving your overall English skills every day. In podcast number 2, I spoke about the flap T. We came to understand that the flap T is an unstressed T sound found between two vowel sounds, that is. The flap T can come between words. You may remember this. This is a refresher, but the flap T can connect words together. If I say I got an apple, I wouldn't say I got an apple. I'd say got an apple. Now, today I'm going to read a news article from BreakingNewsEnglish.com written by Sean Banville. And by the way, this website, Breaking News English, is a free service, not full of advertisements. On this website, you can practice reading English, and they have a number of free exercises, both to practice the British and the American accent. Very valuable website for anybody who would like to dedicate some time every day to practicing English. And so the name of that website, one more time, is BreakingNewsEnglish.com. And today we're going to read an article from BreakingNewsEnglish.com. This is an article just released today, September 26th. The article headline is Water Seller Becomes China's Richest Man. Think about that. A man selling water? The richest man in China? Now me, I'm a young guy. I'm 26. I'm rather young. But I've spent my entire life paying for water. I've always understood you got to pay for water. Well, I didn't spend my entire life paying for it, but I have paid for water ever since I was a little boy. But I hear stories from my elders who tell me that when they were young, they didn't pay for water. So this is interesting now. How has a man who sells something that was once free, has become the richest man in China? Let's read about this. So this is from September 26th, 2020. Notice the way I say that word, by the way. 2020. Not a flap T, but I don't say 2020, do I? I say 2020. We'll get into that another time. Now, in this reading, I'd just like to point out there are going to be a number of flap T's. And if you really listen for the flap T's when I'm reading them out, you will find benefits in this. I can guarantee 100%, it will improve your overall understanding. Focus and listen for the flap T's. We'll see some good benefits here. And keep in mind, a flap T is a light D sound that comes between two vowels. It's got a very soft sound, as in the word water. The headline rather, of our article today, Water Seller, water, not water, that's British, water, very British sounding, water. That's how they talk where I'm from. Now I'll read out this article here. Let's see what we've got. Water seller becomes China's richest man. 26th of September, 2020. A businessman who sells bottled water is now the richest man in China. The business magazine, Bloomberg, named Mr. Zhang Shanshan as China's richest man in its latest Billionaires Index. The magazine said Mr. Zhang was worth over $58 billion. This makes him $2 billion richer than the previous number one, Jack Ma. Mr. Ma founded the retail internet giant Alibaba. Mr. Zhang made his wealth from his Nongfu spring bottled water company. He then branched out into making vaccines. He is the chairman of a vaccine manufacturer called the Beijing Wantai Biological Pharmacy. Mr. Zhang is now the 17th on the global rich list. It seems that he will move up on that list in the future. So that was the first half of this article. Something I'd like to point out before we continue. Did you notice when we talked about money there? I'll repeat this sentence. Mr. Zhang is worth over $58 billion. That makes him $2 billion richer than the previous number one. Now, when we refer to money, notice that I don't only say 58 billion, but I say dollars. When we refer to money, it is always important to state the currency that you're talking about. Whether it's dollars, euros, yen, pesos, you always want to make sure that the currency is said. Now, when you say dollars, it is implied that you are talking about American dollars. People just assume American dollars. Unless you're in Canada or Australia, in which case you would have to say Canadian dollars or Australian dollars. However, if you're in anywhere else and you say dollars, it's assumed that you're talking about American. Anyway, let's get back to this article, see what we got. Zhang Shangshang, 66, was a construction worker before he got into business. He started his Nongfu Spring Company in 1996. This was just as China's market for bottled water was emerging. Bottled water is now a huge industry in China. Most people who live in China prefer drinking bottled water to tap water for health reasons. They prefer not to trust tap water. Chinese media call Mr. Zhang a lone wolf because he is rarely seen in public. He rarely gives interviews, and he likes to keep to himself. Interesting information that we're seeing here. Man who was at the right place at the right time began selling bottled water. Right place, right time. What do you think about that? Imagine selling something like water. Everybody needs it. You don't even have to sell it for a lot of money. You just sell it for a little bit of money, and a lot of people are going to be in need of what you've got. Anyway, in this reading, I noticed a few flap tees that stood out to me. I'd just like to point them out. Now, the one that came up the most frequent flap tee that we saw, I believe, was in the words bottled water. Bottled water, bottled water, bottled water. And you know what? If you want to test that flap tee out a little bit, try repeating it the way that I just did. Bottled water, bottled water. Give it a shot. If you feel that tee is coming out very stressed, very strong, you want to tone it down a little bit, just a notch. Take it down. Bottled water. Bottled water. Another one that I notice here. I'll reread this entire sentence. Zhang Shangshang, 66, was a construction worker before he got into business. Got into business. Got into. Notice that those words, got and into, they're together. They sound like all one word, got into. It's a good one. Here's another one. He started. He started his company. Wow. Okay. Started. There's another. Here's another. Started his company in 1996. Did you hear that? 1996. So when I say 19, that has that true T sound. 90, 96. That one, I reduce that T, make it a flap T, and just let it flow out. 96, 96. So this leads to an interesting discussion. Tap water versus bottled water. What's better? I hear that measured in liters, we're supposed to be drinking 2 liters? Yeah, 8 cups of water, 2 liters a day. 2 liters of water in a day. Wow. 2 liters of water. Who drinks that much? I do. Honestly, I drink cucumber water. I love cucumber water. I just take some cucumber slices, put them into a jug of water with actually 2 liters of water. It's a nice coincidence. Put a little bit of honey in there, just to, little razzle-dazzle, as we say. And leave it overnight. Minimum 4 hours. Maximum, I think maximum maybe 10 hours. You can still drink it after 10 hours, but what you want to do is take it out of the refrigerator and remove the cucumber. Otherwise, it doesn't taste very good if it sits for too long. Anyway, that's besides the point, but that is a health tip that I strongly advise to anybody. Cucumber water. Anyway. Bottled water or tap water. Now, I find myself in this very moment drinking tap water, actually. I'm usually a bottled water kind of guy. Am I a sucker? Well, I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Now, there's an idiomatic expression there. An interesting one. A sucker. Am I a sucker? Now, a sucker is to say somebody who is being taken advantage of. And so am I being taken advantage of by usually using bottled water? Maybe. But I feel healthy about it. And it's not expensive. It's not too much. Just to be sure that I'm getting clean water, I'll pay it. I wonder if anybody agrees with me. Do people agree with me about the water? Everybody drinks it. What do you think? Tap water, bottled water. You see, in Toronto, that's my city, Toronto, the tap water, they say it has fluoride in it. And I'll tell you, you can taste it. It does taste sweet. But that's the thing. Fluoride actually doesn't taste bad. That's why, you don't mind when the dentist puts fluoride in your mouth. It doesn't taste horrible. At least for me. But here in Mexico, it's more like chlorine in the water. So it's a different way of keeping it clean, maybe? Who knows? Who knows what the way to go is? Now, to take things to another level here, another level of podcast, and to make this worth your time, I believe it's been worth your time up till this point. We read something out, we caught a couple of flap T's, but I want to read a tongue twister with some flap T's in it. The use of this is that you can listen and you're going to hear a plethora. That means a lot of flap T's. That's a word that, by the way, I suggest adding to your vocabulary regularly. A plethora. A plethora. It's a fun word to use. Whenever you can use it, It is very descriptive. And the more colorful our vocabulary is, the more advanced we sound when we speak. So, use the word plethora, and you can have your English stand out in a positive way. A plethora. That is, by the way, spelled P-L-E-T-H-O-R-A. Anyway, a tongue twister I'd like to read out that has the flap T in it. Listen closely. Let's see what we've got. Betty Botter bought some butter, but she said the butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it'll make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter will make it better than the bitter butter. So she bought a bit of better butter and put it in her batter, and her batter was not bitter. So Betty Botter bought a bit of better butter and put it in her batter, and her batter was not bitter. Wow. A lot of T's in there, but very few of them are actually pronounced, if any. A lot of flap T's is actually what we're hearing. Betty Botter bought a bit of better butter. This Betty Botter tongue twister, you can find it online. Do a quick Google search. Betty Botter bought some butter. Quick Google search, you'll find it. And then you can practice it. When you practice it, you enhance your muscle's ability to recall that movement, right? And then, when you are in a regular conversation, you won't have to think about it. I know how it is. I speak Spanish as a second language, and I'm pretty good. I'm not perfect. My grammar sounds a little funny, I'll bet, but I'm pretty good. And I know how it is when you're speaking and sometimes things are just coming out slowly. Maybe you miss a couple of words that somebody says, and it gets a little bit intimidating. You feel like, what do I even practice a language for? I can't even understand this person speaking to me. What am I practicing for?
Well, I can assure you your time practicing is used well. However, it's best if you practice with a focus.
So let's put this focus right now on this flap T. Continue listening for it. Find that Betty Botter bought some butter. Betty Botter bought a bit of better butter. Tongue twister. You won't regret it. Another one, this is a little nursery rhyme. It's a fun one. Mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy. A kid'll eat ivy too, wouldn't you?
Folks, this is just a quick message to remind you to subscribe to the Accent Training Podcast. If you haven't already, you don't want to miss a second of this accent training experience. And you want to be updated whenever I've got new content out for you. So if you haven't subscribed, hit subscribe now.
Now, that doesn't even sound like English, does it? No. Mares eat oats and does eat oats. Little lambs eat ivy. Little lambs eat ivy. What is a lambs eat ivy? Lambs eat ivy, lambs eat ivy. Lambs eat ivy. Okay, let me explain. Mares eat oats. Mares eat oats. A mare is a female horse. And so this is saying female horses eat oats. And does eat oats. Now, what is a doe? Well, anybody who knows how to sing can tell you that a doe is a deer. It's a female deer. Doe, a deer, a female deer. Does eat oats. And little lambs eat ivy. Little lambs eat ivy. Little lambs eat ivy. Little lambs, but we're not saying little because we're not British. Well, at least I'm not British. Little. Little lambs eat ivy. Eat ivy. Eat ivy. Ivy is a plant. If you're unaware, ivy is a type of plant. A kid'll eat ivy too, wouldn't you? A kid'll eat ivy too, wouldn't you? Wow, okay. So a kid'll, like a kid will, Eat ivy. Again, eat ivy. 2. And then the final ones. Wouldn't you? Okay. The 2 words I'm saying are wouldn't and you. But you see, in the American accent, we will put these 2 words together to sound not like wouldn't you, but wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you go? Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? These are a couple of things that you can practice in your daily life, along with the word plethora. You don't want to forget that word. Plethora. Plethora. Very valuable word. Plethora. So go on practicing that word, plethora, along with your flap T's. Keep on listening. Now, I'm going to tell a quick story. A story about my own experience learning language here in Mexico. You see, as I mentioned, I speak Spanish as a second language. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. When I first came to Mexico, I was 19 years old. I was very adventurous, and so I took a bus from Toronto all the way down to Mexico. I didn't know any Spanish at the time. I was coming here to do some volunteer work for the summer. I needed something to do. Just finished school. And, well, just needed to go and experience something new. Something outside of the box. So off to Mexico I went. When I first got here, I didn't know any Spanish. I knew hola, hello. I knew gracias. I knew how to say adios for goodbye. And I knew maybe a couple of bad words that some friends of mine taught me. However, I didn't know any real useful Spanish. And so the first thing that I did when I got here is I learned the words como se dice. Como se dice. That means, how do you say this? So I would just pick up objects, point at them. Everybody was always happy to talk with me and happy to help. I mean, they weren't very patient. Anybody who said, oh, I'm happy, I'll teach you some Spanish, they weren't very patient. I had to learn on my own by this como se dice method. So I could just point at my socks and say, como se dice? Como se dice eso? And they would tell me, calcetines. And como se dice anything. And they would tell me the word. And through this, I built a significant vocabulary. I still do this regularly. When I don't know something, I say, como se dice, blah, 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 blah. And I learn. Now, here's the thing. I look like a fool for a moment. One time, I say, how do you say this? And maybe some people will look at me like I'm silly. And they'll say, this silly guy, he doesn't know how to say shoes. He doesn't know how to say tomato or something, regular. Well, sometimes you don't know. But when you ask, then you're not a fool anymore, right? Then you are now knowledgeable. And the next time that this word comes up, you'll be able to use it with confidence. This same experience that I have with my Spanish, and in the way that even today, even though it's been about 7 years now since I started learning Spanish, even today I'm still asking questions in a regular fluid conversation with friends, in a professional setting, all over the place. I say, sorry, I'm just not sure about this word. Do you mind helping me? Or I'll just say, como se dice esta cosa? And, somebody explains it to me. Or they'll just quickly say the word. The point is, ask questions if you're not sure. Now, that's my advice for improving on a daily basis. You are going to be learning English next week, next year, in 5 years, in 10 years. You're going to be learning English for the rest of your life, most likely, right? And so it doesn't matter if things are perfect right now. It matters if things are perfect 10, 20 years from now. Because 20 years from now, you'll still be learning. Believe me, you'll still be asking, how do you say this? How do I say this? How do I say that? And if you're not still asking questions, then your English is not going to keep on growing. You're going to be learning for the rest of your life. But 20 years from now, the things that you'll be learning are far beyond what you're currently learning today. So, today, what I'd like everybody listening to do is to take the opportunity to listen for flap T's, to use the word plethora. There are a plethora of reasons why you should do this. The most important of which, I would say, is that you can improve in a very easy way, with minimal effort, on a daily basis. Now, we're going to wrap things up with that for today. This has been a pleasure and an honor to speak to my audience once more. Thank you for my listeners who are around the world, in Asia, people all across America, it seems, which is wonderful to see. People around Canada, people around Mexico. Let's keep on learning, and let's keep on practicing these skills and improving and seeing changes on a daily basis. Thank you for listening here today, and have a wonderful day.